Kia ora koutou. We've come into the city and we're at the Aotea site in our meeting room. We're joined by Pedro, our senior architect. Pedro, can you tell us the key elements of the design process?
I think for every single project, the main elements that you need to look at is the floors, the walls, and the ceilings. In the case of city railing, there's also an element of movement, of people movement through the station that needs to be considered as well, to make sure that you design a path that's safe and intuitive and legible for everyone.
Thank you, Pedro. Can you tell us the materials and how you choose the materials in the design process?
So when selecting materials, there's a couple of things to be taken into consideration. The first one is we could talk about sustainability, or making sure that the products or the selection that we're using is as sustainable as possible. So for example, if you want to clad a wall, you could have, we know that elements that, like aluminium, like this sample here, that produce more CO2 or are less sustainable than others like timber. So if there's some conscious decision that you can make when selecting materials. But also, we know from experience in other projects that not everyone feels the same way about being in a public space, especially underground. So having airy materials is always a good starting point. For example, floor finishes, we have a few samples here of what they could look like. We like working with samples. We like testing and trying and touching the materials we're going to end up using. So many times we will put them on the floor and see how they look. Clear materials are always more appropriate because people can really see what they're working on. So in the case of CRL, we will probably discard finishes like that one, and we'll go for something that is closer to these lighting ones. This would be a good starting point.
Thank you for explaining that. So as we know that through the engagement process, can you tell us what the impact Mana Whenua has on the design?
I think one of the most rewarding experiences of working at CRL is to have the opportunity of engagement with Mana Whenua. And through that engagement, we've been able to identify cultural elements that are important to them and define a narrative that includes elements into our design. So for example, we've been discussing what kind of timber we're trying to use timber throughout the stations, and we've been able to identify with them what local timber materials are of more importance to them. For example, carry timber, etc. But also every station entry will have a feature ceiling, and we are discussing and we are designing those ceilings to make sure that they tell the right stories, the stories that are appropriate to the site and to the Mana Whenua.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Pedro, for spending the time today to explain that for us. Thank you.